Hello, souls and demons, and welcome back. Today we have those strange and curious glitch in the Matrix stories. I know I said I was going to put them on a second channel, but I kinda prefer them here. So sit back, grip your seats, and enjoy. My dead mother sent me a sign from beyond, or just a coincidence. So I was just reading an old thread from here about phone calls from deceased friends and relatives. I have a story that relates, but that is for another time. This is something that recently happened to me, and I feel weird mentioning it to anyone because they may think it's just a coincidence, and I'm trying to make something out of nothing. But I can't let it go. Long story short, my mom had been sick for the past 2 years. Things got worse last year and then really bad this spring. In July, she passed away. I have sisters, but I was the main person taking care of her, and we became exceptionally close in the past 2 years. I was the one she called for everything. Needing help ordering something online, questions about insurance, doctor's appointments, random other things pertaining to day-to-day life, etc. At the end, she was so weak, so when anyone asked her to verify the last 4 of her social or date of birth, or secondary insurance to Medicare, she knew I would answer for her. I helped her with it all, so I was well versed in her personal information. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. A friend and I were going to a drive-in movie, and I needed a few things at Target. So I decided to place an order for pickup and added a few snacks for the movie so we would be set. I get to Target and check in on the app. As per usual, the app says someone will be right out with my order, and to show them the 4-digit code through the window. I briefly glance down at the numbers, look away, and then quickly look back at the numbers in utter shock. The 4 digits are the last 4 digits of my mother's social security number. It wasn't backwards or off by a number or out of order, but in perfect order exactly as listed on her social security card. I feel like this could be her, but I'm not sure what proof would be sufficient, since I think even if I were to see her, I'd think I was going crazy or just needed rest. I notice numbers a lot on license plates, on receipts, on clocks, etc., but can't recall ever seeing something that hit me like this. Is this a glitch or a thinning veil scenario or just a strange coincidence? Thanks for reading. Appreciate your thoughts. Airpods materialized. Weirdest thing just happened. I had my AirPods in the case in my left pocket. As I sat down, the case fell out and opened, facing down. My floor is carpet, so there was no sound and no risk of damage. I just observed that other than the open lid, they were fine and chose to just leave it until I got up again. Well, I got up about 10 minutes later to go do something, and when I came back I remembered they were on the floor next to the chair. The case was still there, but one AirPod was right next to the case on the left, and the other was 2 to 3 feet to the right of the case. Not only do the physics of this not add up, but if I had seen they weren't in the case the first time, I would have picked them up right then and there to avoid stepping on them, etc. I have absolutely no idea this happened, and I am completely perplexed. I vividly remember looking down at them a few minutes earlier, and the sight when I returned was completely different. I didn't kick the case, and we don't have a cat or anything. Super weird. Weird glitch in a Suburban train. Okay, so this is my first post, and I apologize in advance for my mistake since English is not my first language. This happened a few years ago when I was in high school. Like 7 years ago. I was in a train with some classmates, back from a school trip at a museum in Paris. We lived in the suburbs and had to take the train for 45 minutes to an hour before getting home. So we're spending this time talking and laughing, then arrived at one station. Let's call it Station A, where one of our classmates lives. So she says goodbye and leaves the train. The very next stop is ours, Station B. So my friend and I went off the train at this next station. But when we are on the train platform on the dock, again, sorry for my choice of words, the train's already leaving and we don't recognize our station. We walk a bit and just don't understand where we are. We finally notice that we're at Station A and have just to take a bus to go home. Calling my mom to tell her we're a bit late because we got off at the wrong stop. I don't fully recall what we thought at this moment, but I remember we were just lost on the reason of why we ended up here, and probably assumed we were too tired to pay attention. The next day at school, I went to ask the first girl who left the train if she went off at the wrong station the night before. Because we stopped at Station A instead of B, that would obviously mean she got out at the wrong stop too. She answered that she did go out at her stop, Station A. I'm having a hard time explaining the story even in my native language because it's easier when you know the train path. But anyway, it's just like the train stopped twice at the same location, and we are sure the train moved between those two. We talk about this sometimes and still don't understand. Maybe it was a glitch in the Matrix or some parallel world thing, but to this day I still don't get what happened that night. Colleague gets laid off. I go on holiday and she's back and has no memory of being laid off. This all happened this summer while I was working at a previous company. As the sole person who purchased IT equipment, I was on good terms with the purchasing manager. She seemed to be the only one who knew how to navigate the corporate jungle on my behalf, so I could order what we needed at our medium-sized, 250 employees branch office. This summer, our parent company based in Germany, we're in the UK, implemented a whole new ERP finance purchasing system with an automated process, making the entire UK purchasing department redundant. It would now all be dealt with automatically or by the purchasing department in Germany. Sandra was one of the last to go. She had been at the company for over 20 years and was vital to the transition. Due to COVID, the office was closed to anyone who didn't need to be there. Usually this meant just me, keeping the servers running, and the receptionist, who was there to accept mail and direct calls on her console, which wasn't set up to be able to work from home. On Sandra's last day towards the end of August, I saw her car as I pulled into the office car park. She was waiting for me already, a distinctive blue Audi TT. I opened the office and took receipt of her laptop, phone, keys, etc., and made a note which I copied, giving one to her and one posted in HR's pigeonhole. I remember making a joke that nothing would get bought now as she was the only one who knew what she was doing in this company, and she would be sadly missed. She said she was going to take 6 months off before deciding whether to retire early or find another job. I wished her well and made a joke about being only 30 years from retirement myself, and she left. Just as she drove out of the car park, the receptionist arrived. So I took Sandra's stuff up to the IT storeroom and marked it as such on the asset register. It could be deployed to someone else if needed now. For some reason, our annual leave ran October 1st through September 30th. Maybe it's a German thing. I don't know. So I had a lot of leave to take. So I had 3 weeks off, coming back at mid-September. While I was away, my colleague from another site about an hour away had been covering for me. So I figured he'd been using Sandra's kit for someone who'd started while I was off. That's when I double-checked, as I'm not sure I remembered to disable her. Her account was still active. Oops. I disabled it and checked the asset register. Her laptop was marked as in use again, but assigned to her. I called up my colleague, who said he'd only been on site twice to change the backup tapes. Hadn't even noticed a laptop where I'd left it. That's when I get a call forwarded from reception. It's Sandra. She can't get into Office 365. Oh dear, I'm so sorry. I didn't know they'd hired you back. Things must have fallen apart pretty quickly after you left. She had no idea what I was talking about. She'd never been made redundant. Everyone else in her team had, but she'd been kept on to manage the UK side of the project. They'd never even planned for her to be laid off. I looked back through the system. No leavers form submitted. That's not unusual. I can't find any paperwork. HR doesn't have the kit list I photocopied or the keys I left with it. Sandra called back later in the day. Another issue caused by me disabling her account. She swears she was never at the office that day. Doesn't remember our conversation. Receptionist doesn't recall seeing her distinctive car that day. Anyway, I left that company a couple of weeks ago. But this has been bugging me since September. No idea what happened. I have no explanation. Hey y'all, long-time listener, first-time caller. Here's a little background. Hopefully this makes sense. I'm a lab analyst for an environmental consulting company, which is a whole lot of words for I look at mold and asbestos under a microscope. There are 3 of us in our lab, but we aren't all full-time. We aren't all there daily. Some days not all of us will read sets of samples. We are required by our accreditation company by the state to check our microscopes daily and ensure our eyepieces, bulbs, slide stage, etc. are all properly aligned and in working order for the most accurate results of our samples. We report this by logging our name, microscope ID, date, and adjustments on a piece of paper at the end of our days. Since COVID has happened, we've all missed working days here and there, been overwhelmed with samples, and just plain forgot to log our adjustments. But we always try to keep an account for who didn't log that day. Since things have been getting so hectic, a few logs were missed, and tracking those missed entries also fell by the wayside. Our lab director figured out who and when the log was missed by and started a new sheet to correct this. She placed it in order of date, meaning it was at the end of the book. I saw her put it there, and she told me it was there. And the next day I told the other analyst about the log sheet we all needed to correctly sign and account for. The incorrect page was removed and replaced with the correct one. Except the next day it wasn't there. And the old log was in its place. No one touched it. We all looked at each sheet in that log, thinking it might have gotten placed in the wrong area. Nope, gone. With the old log in its place. Dumbfounded, we left it for tomorrow's problem. Tomorrow came and still missing, with the old log in its place. I tell my lab director this. She's also looked for the page and couldn't find it either, when she's the one that put it in the book, and she has no explanation. The next day, I go to make another new sheet for this log and boom, there it is, right where it should be, and the other page is now gone. There are 3 of us in the lab and one has been out due to a COVID scare. Neither of us have touched it. No one else in the office would know it was missing or that this page even existed. But there it was again. No one has any clue as to what happened. If this was a prank by someone else in the office, it couldn't be. Why would it be? No one has fessed up to it. Also, what a shitty, pointless prank. Hopefully that made sense. I still have no explanation. This glitch cost me $200. I work at a quite large retirement home with 3 separate buildings, and every Wednesday, we have to get a COVID test. So today before my shift started, I had to go to the furthest building where they do the testing. Since this building is the furthest building, and I do not work in that one, I parked in that parking lot and I left my car running because I knew I was going to be back in a minute to go park in my usual spot. I usually always leave my car running whenever I go somewhere for a very short amount of time, just to make things easier. It is not an unusual thing for me to do. I met my friend in the testing room and we were headed back to the same building at the same time, and I offered her a ride back so she didn't have to walk. When we went to get back in my car, my doors were locked and my car was still running. I immediately called a locksmith and he said he would be there in 10 minutes. While waiting for him to arrive, we decided to walk to the other building and start getting things ready for our shift. Out of habit and to make sure, I checked my apron pockets, which are relatively small and thin, and my keys weren't there. I had no pockets and nowhere else my keys would have been. It was kind of pointless to look for my keys because my car was turned on, which means my keys were definitely in the car, but nevertheless I still looked. I don't have a spare key either. When the locksmith called me to say he was here, I met him at my car, and my car wasn't running anymore. It had only been about 15 minutes since I got the lock out of it, so I thought my battery died or maybe I ran out of gas, even though I had 3/4 of a tank left and my battery isn't old. The locksmith suggested it was a safety hazard of the car, even though I have sat in my car for a prolonged period of time and it has never turned off on me. He ended up getting the door open, and when I went to go grab my keys, they weren't in the ignition or anywhere visible in my car. At this point, I'm thinking to myself that this has to be a joke. I walked over to a window that you could see the COVID testing room from to see if they were in there, and as I was walking, I heard my keys jingle in my apron. You're able to hear my keys whenever I'm walking. Sure enough, they were in my apron. My friend and I both started to freak out because my car was 100% on and running, and locked. I asked the locksmith how much it would be, and he told me $25 for the drive there and $25 for the drive back, and $150 for opening the door. That's $200 for a 25-minute time period. Ridiculous if you ask me. Right before Christmas, too, which blows because I work a minimum wage job part-time, and I have 5 family members to buy gifts for. Definite slap in the face. This blows my mind because my car was on. I swear on everything. Both me and my friend can vouch for that. You can hear my car running when it's on. And I checked my apron. My keys are not something hard to miss in a thin apron. I had also been walking around preparing for my shift to start, and never once heard my keys jingle. This feels like a sick joke someone played on me, but it's impossible. I have no clue how my keys ended up in my apron, because I left my car on. This is the first time something impossibly weird has ever happened to me. Goodbye $200 and fuck you, universe. I don't know how else to explain this except it being a glitch. I died last night, but I'm still here. So this actually happened last week. It just took me some time to come to terms with it. I got a phone call from my next door neighbor late in the evening, asking if I can help him move a mattress into his upstairs. His mom is ill and has a big, heavy sleep number bed. I of course ran over to help because they're great neighbors. I get over there and his friend, who is also a priest, was there to help. I helped them figure out how to separate the mattress from the bed so we could fit it upstairs. We get it all moved up and back in place when my neighbor asks if I can help them move an armoire upstairs too. I think nothing of it, and we pull it out of his travel trailer and start bringing it up the stairs of his house. This is where I died. The front stairs are 11 steps. I was on the lower end of the armoire, about 6 steps up, when my neighbor and his friend lose a handle on the armoire, and it comes crashing down on me, and I fall backwards towards the pavement. I then wake up in my dining room to my phone ringing and my wife asking me if I'm going to answer the phone. It's my neighbors asking me if I can help move a bed upstairs for his mom. I go over there and meet his priest friend again, as this has been the first time I've met him. I say I can help with the bed, but I cannot help with the armoire. My neighbor was like, "How did you know about the armoire?" I then proceeded to tell them I'm pretty sure I just died. I spent the next hour talking with the priest. He had so many questions. My neighbor didn't believe it until I described the upstairs bedroom in perfect detail, down to the metal mattress frame on the floor and the intricate headboard leaning against the wall. And I had never been upstairs in their house before. The priest asked me what I saw after I died. I told him I never actually died. Before it happened, I woke up at my dining room table. Did I see a soul leaving a dying insect? When I've told this story to people, they kind of just look bewildered. I thought this would be a great place to post and find out if anyone else has seen something similar. Around 10 years ago, before my husband and I lived together, he was round at my flat and we were hanging out and watching movies. A large moth started flying about the room, and my husband, who hates any kind of bug, decided to kill it. He got a fly swatter and after a few attempts managed to hit it, and the weirdest thing happened that only I saw. The moth dropped down to the floor. However, where it had been in the air, a bright green neon outline of the moth appeared. It was really bright, then dimmed and disappeared. It was over so quick, and I asked my husband if he had seen it, and he hadn't, as he wasn't looking up. I've tried to Google to see if there was anything similar, but nothing comes up. I'm convinced it was the soul dying, and yes, I do believe every living thing has one. I would love to hear your thoughts on what I saw and hear of other possible explanations. Running into the same guy for years. Are we connected somehow? I live in Omaha, NE. It's not a massive city, but our metropolitan area is home to about 1 million people, so it's not a small city either. For something like 5 to 6 years, I'd run into the same guy in the most random of places. He was a very plain, normal-looking guy. Usually wore a hat, t-shirt, brown hair, usually had on a coat. Maybe 6 feet tall. White, but yeah, very plain-looking white dude, with no real features that would scream, "Oh, look, it's a guy with a purple afro," or whatever. We ran into each other over several times a year, maybe at least every few months. Anyway, every time we would pass each other at a store, park, concert, whatever, we just do the thing all Omaha people do when they make eye contact. Kinda nod at each other politely and keep moving. After literally years of these chance run-ins, I could tell that he'd become aware of it too. We'd start giving each other a kind of knowing look like, "This is weird, you're that dude I always see." We never spoke, just kinda smirked at each other knowingly. I'm not really an introverted kind of guy, but for some reason I never had the balls to just say something to him. I mean, despite my opinion and hunch that he was thinking the same thing as me, I always wondered what the hell would I say to him, so I just never said anything. Things got really weird when we ran into each other in different cities than Omaha. 2 times in fact, KC and LA. And both times we just passed each other and looked equally perplexed as usual. The last time I saw him was at a Walmart near the self-checkout. I was walking out of the store past that little warmer machine where you can buy the pre-cooked rotisserie chicken, and he was just entering the store. We passed each other, smirked, and kept going. I almost came close to muttering a hey, but for some reason I didn't. After that, I promised myself I'd approach him and chat the next time. Since then, I haven't seen him again, and that was about 3 to 4 years ago. I can go more into detail, but wanted your opinion on the phenomenon. I'm sure someone has a phrase coined for it. First glitch in the Matrix. I went into my living room to watch TV. Living room for the Americans reading. And I picked up the remote to turn up the volume on the one TV, and accidentally dropped it on the ground, and it fell facing where the batteries are put in. As soon as I picked it up, I noticed the batteries fell out, and I was speechless, because the back of the remote is sellotaped shut. It's as if they fell through the remote. There's no fucking way they could have fallen out. I then cut open the back of the remote where the tape was, and the batteries weren't in the remote. To make it even weirder, as I used the other remote to change channels, I let out a very loud yawn, and as soon as I looked at the TV, there was a guy yawning on the TV also. Don't know if that means anything, but this is my first legitimate glitch in the Matrix. I honestly don't know what to say, it's just so fucking weird.